Hi, I'm Kirsten Quinn, and this is the Philadelphia Cultural Forum on CCPTV, Community College of Philadelphia's educational channel. Tonight we have with us playwright, director, and founding artistic director of South Camden Theatre Company at the Waterfront South Theatre, Joe Paprzycki. Joe is the author of 49 plays and 4 screenplays, including Last Rites, Understudies, Express Tracks, Fortune Cookies, Tennessee's Final Curtain, Youth in America, and Indoor Picnic, all of which have been given fully realized productions and received widespread critical acclaim. His directing credits include Waiting for Lefty, That Championship Season, and Tennessee Williams' Green Eyes, along with many others. An adjunct faculty member at Temple University, LaSalle University, and Rosemont College, as well as a voting member of the Dramatists Guild of America, Joe is a fixture on the Philadelphia and New Jersey cultural scenes and is a huge part of South Camden Theatre Company's success. SCTC was formed 9 years ago and has really paved the way for revitalizing the city of Camden. The company produces edgy, thought-provoking plays while also tackling such classics as The Moon for the Misbegotten and Suddenly Last Summer. Tonight he will be sharing some of his most recently produced play, Express Tracks, and telling us about his work with South Camden Theatre Company. Please welcome the incredibly talented Joe Paprzycki to the show. Hi, Joe.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming on our show and sharing with us your work and telling us a little bit about what's going on with you and your history in South Camden Theatre Company.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's
really
wonderful to be
appreciate
here.
it. Thank you. I wanted to first talk a little bit about your work as a playwright and how you started, because you have had a play with South Camden Theatre Company produced every year since the inception of the company, right?
Right.
So can you tell me how you got into playwriting? I think it's a really good story.
Sure. My career in playwriting started by seeing an angel, literally. I hadn't written anything since college. I was in my mid-30s. And one day I was walking my dog and got the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Yeah.
And at the bottom of the Inquirer was a picture from the night before of the Tony Awards where Angels in America, Millennium Approaches had won the best play. And in the picture was Pryor in the bed reaching up and an angel descending from the heavens. And I don't know what grabbed me, but I grabbed it and kept staring at it and tore it out. And next thing you know, I said, I'm going to go see this play. I had no idea what the play was about. I had not been to New York as an adult.
Really?
So I got tickets, and I go to New York and went the wrong way through Times Square, which now, being in New York as much as I am, it's really embarrassing, but I went the wrong way.
Oh, please, all of us have done that, I think.
Next thing I'm wandering the wrong way and trying to find the Walter Kerr Theater.
Yeah.
And I walked down towards, I think it was 47th Street. And when I turned and saw the marquee of the angel bent over crying, my life changed.
Yeah.
And I went in and I saw the play, and at the end couldn't move.
Really?
And I realized that a story that I had been trying to write about my grandfather's bar in Camden, New Jersey, during 1967 when the shipyard closed, that I threw out 3 5-page drafts, could be a play. And went home, and the next day started writing, and 2 weeks later my first play, Last Rites, was in, the first draft was finished.
That's unbelievable.
And it was all from seeing this angel in a newspaper and then seeing angels. So my first play, Last Rites, I started to just kind of see what to do with it. I had no idea where to take a play.
Yeah.
So I joined the Dramatists Guild and started to research what you do with a play. You know, in this day and age, it's pretty hard.
Sure. I mean, you're writing your first play, you're finding out about the theater world, and
I had no idea about anything.
Yeah.
And I found certain organizations, certain up around New York, smaller companies, that would send us a play, and if we like it. So a company called Bravo in New York, well actually Nutley, New Jersey, and in New York, read the play, and I get a phone call saying, we want to do a reading of this play. And I was like, of course, wow, I'm going to be on Broadway by the end of the year. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Of course. That's the way you think when you've written your first play and someone calls you. But we ended up doing a year of readings at a Barnes & Noble in West Orange, at their company in Nutley. And we did a 3-week production, an equity showcase in Manhattan on 43rd Street.
Wow. I mean, that's major for your first play.
Yeah. And we did Last Rites there. from that, I got my first agent because he was in the same building and he came and saw Last Rites. So I got to meet some cool people through that. And then I started on my second play because the stories just started to come at me.
Yeah.
I guess they've been bottled up all of those years. And then I wrote a play called Understudies, which we actually developed at a theater here in Philadelphia, the Brick Playhouse, which used to be on South Street, which was the greatest place to develop work, the greatest place to learn that you need a thick skin in theater, the greatest place to meet actors who are also right where you are as a playwright. Everybody's trying to work and do things together. And I met some of the most incredible people who we both are, mutual friend Michelle Pauls, and so many people.
Bill McKinley.
Yeah.
And
we all
Barry
met at
Brait.
the Brick. Barry Brait, who just came to see a play a couple weeks ago. Barry actually directed Understudies at the Brick.
Did he?
We did a year of development of Understudies, and Barry directed it with Alan Radway. It was his first part in Philadelphia.
I've
now
done
Alan
a lot of shows with him.
now Alan runs Simpatico. So it was all these great people who all just wanted to work and find a place for their work to go. So that was my second play, and then we went into, I wrote a play called Fortune Cookies, which actually is going to get a revival next season at South Camden, which is a play set in a Chinese restaurant in Camden, where 4 friends come once a month to keep their friendship alive from a department store they had worked in. It's set in the 90s, and this night, Mr. Wong, who's been listening to their dreams for years, gives them their dreams. But the whole point of the play is, what are the dreams that we're living, the dreams that are being dreamt for us? And you see it's a play about fate and a play about, is it a mistake or is it not a mistake? What happens? What's the fate of where we're heading? So, and then I went into other plays. I guess why I write a play is that somebody said, in the movie Reds, I always say this, in the movie Reds, Diane Keaton is in the bar and she's playing Louise, and Maureen Stapleton says to her, who is, I'll remember, Emma Goldman, and she says to her, she finally pays attention to her and says, what do you write about? Well, this, that, and she turned right away from her. And I realized that after about 4 plays, realized finally what I was writing about, and that's motivation. So when I need to know why somebody does something or why something happened, I now know why I write, and I think that's carried me now to the next level of writing, is figuring out the motivation for things. And all of my plays, even though they're really different, they're all different stories in different places, I think the constant theme is, why did this happen, or ask a question.
That gives a lot for actors to play with too, because we're always talking about motivation and, why am I doing this? What is the reason for this? And you also have some really major themes in your plays, like Last Rites, for example. That was a family-driven play. I mean, you were writing about your grandfather, right, and the
My
family,
grandparents.
as well as the shipyards and the closing of the shipyards and working-class families.
Right.
And also Catholicism or religion, too?
In some in that. I always call Last Rites a play of misplaced faith. Because the shipbuilders that came into my grandfather's bar put their faith in their job. They said, I was apprenticed in because my father was apprenticed in and his father. So I can leave high school at 15. I can go to work at the shipyard. I will always have that row home. I will always be able to take care of my kids. And then one day in 1967, the Vietnam War was still going on, but the contract started to slip. During the height of World War II, the New York Shipbuilding Company in Camden had over 44,000 workers round the clock. And then by the time 1967 came, it was down to 4,000. And then in the middle of the night, they all got layoff notices.
And what
Their pensions disappeared.
Yeah.
So now this play talks about what happens to these people. Now these are guys that in Act 1 you're in my grandfather's bar and it's fun and they're goofing around and it's all the after work fun. Now in Act 2 the alcohol has now become a crutch.
Yeah.
Because it's 6 months later.
Yeah.
They can't find jobs. The streets are getting worse. People are moving out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all coming, but all the jobs are now gone. And these people who could have either taken a bus to work or you know, they can't do that anymore. Now they have to go out and get a job way under union wage. Mm-hmm. They can't even afford to support their families anymore.
Yeah.
And it's not just 100 people or 200 people, which would be bad enough. It is now thousands of people all thrown out. Next, what happens? RCA does early retirements. RCA goes away. Campbell's Soup stops making soup. So all these manufacturing and factory jobs all disappeared on Camden at the same time, leaving a shell of a city.
Yeah.
And then people go, well, what happened to Camden? Well, there it is. And what I
That's
tried to
the
tell,
reason.
yeah, and what I tried to show in Last Rites is how Camden fell
Yeah.
from what it was to what it became.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's a very jarring ending,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what happened to Camden.
Yeah.
You know, we're coming back now,
Yeah.
but for a lot of years, you know, there was not a lot of hope down there.
Right. And that's why. And I don't think a lot of people know that story.
Well, they look
know?
at Camden and they just say, "Oh, well, it's, you know, it's terrible and it's crime and I'm not going."
Right.
But why, really? I mean, the whole reason that, one of the other reasons not that I became a playwright, but somebody said to me one day in conversation in a bar, of course, and they said, "Well, where are you from?" And I said, "Camden," and they went, I went, "What do you mean, Do you have any idea what it was like when I was a kid? Do you ever have any idea that it was like any other safe, blue-collar, fun to grow up in neighborhood,
Yeah.
very ethnically based?"
Yeah.
But that's what Camden was. But people younger than me only saw what it is and assumed that that's the Camden that I grew up in, but it's not.
Right.
And I tried to show, I thought someone needed to write something. When I started writing Last Rites, I realized this can tell the story not just of Camden, but of many blue-collar cities. Like when we did
Pittsburgh, I mean, you know.
yeah, we did a reading of it at, I mentioned before, in West Orange. And I'll never forget, this man came up to me after, older man, and he came up to me after the play and his hands were shaking. And this was in a reading in a bookstore. And he goes, "How the hell did you know?" I'm like, "Know what?" "That's what they did to me at GAF." "How did you know that's what they did?"
Yeah.
We walked in for our shift and our pink slips were in our things and they had just told us 2 weeks ago we were not getting laid off. I said, because Camden's story is not just Camden's story. We
Right.
just happen to have 3 huge industries go down at the
All
same
at
time.
once,
Oh,
in a
RCA, Campbell Soup,
concentrated
and the
area.
shipyard.
Yeah.
All those jobs just went away.
And what did these people do? I mean, did they
Moved to the
move
suburbs.
out? Okay.
You know, I can use my dad did not get laid off. My dad worked in Oakland at the time, but he had moved us to Oakland because it just started to get really scary in Camden.
Yeah.
And a lot of people it got too scary with the crime and the things that were starting to happen. Families just moved out, took jobs anywhere they could. You know, now all of a sudden you see wives starting to work because they had to pay for the car that the husband now needed to drive to work, that he didn't need the car before.
Right.
And you just saw everything just start to kind of spread into
Yeah.
into the suburbs.
Yeah. And when you wrote Last Rites and you talk about all these things, and this is your first play that you're having produced, that you're having read, and it's that personal of a story, did you feel like exposed in a way? Did you feel like you were really opening yourself up as well as telling this story to people?
I think more opening up my grandparents' story.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, to me it was very normal to sit in a bar at 9 o'clock in the morning and sit there with Slim Jims. The guys were buying me. I thought that was very cool.
Yeah, right.
But when some people who did not grow up in that environment saw this play and said, "This is 7 in the morning and these guys are coming in drinking," and I said, "That's when their shift ended."
Yeah.
So what I was doing is just kind of showing the reality of this neighborhood and the bar and these guys, these guys who just tried to work for a living, you know, and just figured that everything would always be okay because the priest told them it would be okay. Their boss told them it would be okay.
Yeah.
And one day they have no job and no way of making a living anymore. It was really sad.
Tell us about Walt, your grandfather.
My grandfather was a big, big Russian man who, again, about opening yourself up. Some Saturdays would come home about 4 o'clock and go right to sleep in his chair, which my grandmother would yell at him because he's down there drinking with the guys, which I address in the play.
Yeah.
And the stories that I've heard from people who knew him is that he was one of these guys that always had a bottle for someone for a giveaway or he was always there to help. My grandmother, my grandfather in Walt's Cafe were really like this parental unit for these guys.
For the neighborhood.
Yeah. And that's the place they would go when they were happy, and it's the place they would go when they were sad. Like there's a line in the play about, you know, we came in here and toasted our kids and buried our dead, and